Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Marvel Man 901. So today I'm going to do a bit bigger episode as I was sick yesterday to make an episode. Don't worry, I'm fine now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about Domino, Avengers, Morbius, Spirits of Vengeance, Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, Marvel Comics Presents featuring both Kymaera and this German guy, Firestorm, Tales of Astonish, and Cutthroat. So I'm gonna start off with Domino, whose real name is Nina Thurman. She was introduced in X-Force 8. So there are basically two different types of Domino. Then we have this time Domino, who is basically just a mercenary and, well, basically human in her way, which is not the Domino we know today, of course. The Domino we know today is basically the one that we can see in Deadpool 2, which basically means that she's basically unlimited lucky. Yeah, stuff like that. Anyway, this Domino, she has, using guns and stuff like that, close relationship to Cable, fights Deadpool a lot, and of course, somewhat member of X-Force. She's also a member of Six-Pack, these mercenary kind of guys. Anyway, so I'm gonna jump over now to Avengers issue 375 from 1994. So this is a big issue. This basically ends the whole Gatherers Proctor storyline. So previously, Proctor is basically Black Knight from another universe, another reality, where he joined Cersei in the whole gun Josin thing, where they basically just spirit melded or soul melded or something like that. But she basically just stopped loving him and pushed him away. In the Prime universe, which is the 616 universe, it's the other way around. Black Knight basically falls in love with Crystal instead. However, Black Knight Proctor still had the whole Ganyosin thing, which kind of made him stronger, so he of course wanted revenge on Cersei. So he decided to just travel the realities to kill every Cersei until he got to the Prime one, which he now has. He of course gathered the Gatherers as well, making a team during this reality hopping thing. Anyway, right now the Avengers, starring Captain America, Black Widow, of course Black Knight, Hercules, Thunderstrike, Quicksilver, Hank Pym and Crystal, and featuring of course Thena and Sprites of the Eternals as well. They are trying to save Cersei from Proctor's grasp. And Proctor, of course, basically had Yute, who is a watcher of his own reality, I think. He is basically using him to get where he is now. Yute and Cersei in a bit of this force field kind of thing, which he uses to, I believe, he's going to basically just destroy this Earth. However, the Avengers fight the Gatherers and Black Knight fights Proctor. The whole reality of Proctor being Black Knight was revealed in the previous issue, but basically we can see a lot of differences here. While Proctor is actually a lot stronger, he has the Ebony Blade, which is basically a cursed blade that Black Knight previously used in the Prime Universe. However, Black Knight basically gives Proctor a pretty good fight. Eventually, though, Cersei breaks out of this force field. She and Yute are out of it. And she then basically goes up to Proctor and kills him. Just kills him dead. Ending the Gatherers, basically stopping them all in the tracks. And Yute uses his last breath, basically, his last life force to restore New York to its former glory. And to create this portal for Cersei to basically escape into. As she's now going to have the whole eternal madness thing going on, as after the effect, of course, that Black Knight had broken the whole Ganyosin thing, which kind of had a backlash on her. So she is going to go through the portal, but Black Knight decides that he can't leave her alone. He can't let her do this alone, so he joins her as well, and they just disappear through this whole portal. All the Avengers are, of course, heartbroken because of this, but eventually it happened. It's done, basically. So this issue actually has another story. It's called A Bigger Man Than I, and it features Giant Man, or Hank Pym. So basically he wants to try out this psychoanalysis program that is built and Black Widow is basically just keeping tabs on it. Anyway, Pym goes basically into his own mind to use this analysis program thing, and he comes to a bit of a court where basically just ants part of him are there to basically judge him. They all judge him guilty, naturally, as he of course has this guilt within him, which is basically just a representation of that. Eventually though, he does also have the whole righteousness within him as well, as he believes that he is a hero, that he is not a liar of what he says, so he manages to break out of it, but just barely. So, moving on now with Morbius issue 22 from 1994. So this is the second part of Dance of the Hunter storyline, featuring Spider-Man as well. So basically, eventually Spider-Man and Morbius work together to stop this rogue CIA agent and to stop Vic Slaughter. So Vic Slaughter is also after this CIA agent called Randolph Simpson, of course. He was actually hired by Magia to stop this guy, to basically bring him in, basically. However, the CIA are after him as well. And while this happens, even more things happen actually. This old enemy of Morbius, this CIA agent called Simon Stroud, is he basically escaped the loony bin, and he is after both Randolph and Morbius as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. Eventually though, Morbius and Spider-Man fight Slaughter. Slaughter basically gets away somewhat, the whole twisted way that he does, and is rehired by CIA to find both Stroud and Simpson to bring him to the CIA. It all ends though in this issue that where Morbius and Simon Stroud are in a battle, a fight, and basically a deadlock. So we're going to move on now with Spirits of Vengeance issue 23 from 1994, and this is the final issue of Spirits of Vengeance. So this is straight after the Ghost Rider issue 50, where Blaze's wife was killed in a car, and his children, of course, had been kidnapped. So Blaze and this somewhat villain Steelwind finds out that Centurious, this old villain of Blaze, is actually alive and in New York, well, probably New York anyway. So they decide to go there, and they find him in the sewers. They fight him, and eventually they defeat Centurious. Now Blaze manages to save Steelwind's soul from her killing this villain. However, Blaze then just blows him to hell, basically. So it's a pretty good ending, really, to a storyline. So we're going to move on now with Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, issue 5 from 1964. This introduces Baron Strucker. He's of course a Nazi in this issue, as he actually always is, I guess. Anyway, he basically challenges Fury to a fight, and then he poisons him with some kind of tranquilizer, making him of course very easily to beat. So Baron Strucker wins, and everyone knows about it. I mean, the news have a field day with this. And of course Fury is getting sued out by his bosses for this, as they had basically told him to not accept the challenge. However, the Howlers and the Howling Commandos and Fury go into I think Berlin or something like that, having a hell of a war just to find Baron Strucker, and Fury fights him yet again, but this time with fair odds, and defeats him. So we're gonna go for the Marvel Comics Presents now, 156 from 1994. Again, I'm gonna do two parts. The first part is a Kymaera part. This is, of course, Kymaera being Namorita, just being somewhat changed, a little bit more aggressive. Anyway, this is the second part of Matrix Syndrome. So in the previous the previous part, she was basically defeated and captured by this android thing. Now she is inside this containment unit, which has some kind of anti-water in it, that if she kind of breathes it in, like Atlanteans do, she would pretty much die of thirst and wouldn't be able to breathe and whatnot. Anyway, basically we get to hear the motives of this Mother Matrix. Basically what she wants to do is to impregnate Kymaera to create some super soldiers. It's a pretty pretty hefty thing, actually. Anyway, we get to hear a lot about Matrix's background, her origins, basically. Geneticist, whole male-dominated area, basically. She shuns away from society and then comes back as Mother Matrix. That's pretty much that. Anyway, later on Kymaera escapes and then left choking on the ground. This second part, now excuse my German accent as, well, it's actually non-existent. Anyway, it's, the character is called Der Zerstörer, I guess, and the story is called Nacht. So this is basically during World War II, and this Der Zerstörer is basically in Nazi Germany, pretty much on the other side, of course, the British side or whatever. The British bombers come along, and he basically helps them by enlightening them where to bomb, pretty much. So yeah, he's basically a saboteur. So we're gonna move on now with DC here, with Firestorm issue 1 from 1978. So this features Ronald Raymond and Martin Stein. So you probably already heard the whole Firestorm thing, so I'm just gonna go a little bit fast into it here. Ronald Raymond is of course a high school student, kind of outside the whole team dynamics and all that. So he basically just finds this anarchist group thing, and he kind of joins them as a volunteer. He doesn't actually know how cruel these guys actually are. So we're gonna jump over to Martin Stein now before moving on with the story itself. Martin Stein, of course, is a scientist in nuclear physics. He has helped to design this very special, very experimental nuclear facility, and he, even though he's getting a lot of protests and stuff like that, he turns it on. So these anarchists decide to bomb this nuclear facility. So of course Raymond doesn't actually know this. He doesn't know what's actually happening. He's just basically tagging along just to have something to do, I guess, just to be a part of something. However, he realizes that someone is actually inside there, so he tries to stop the explosion. However, the explosion happens, but in a very odd reaction, I guess you can say. So this explosion causes a lot of radiation to leak out, and Martin Stein and Raymond are basically just flushed with radiation, very strange radiation, which basically merges them into one person, into Firestorm. So Firestorm later on fights these anarchists and defeats them easily. And thus Firestorm is born. So we're going to move on now with Tales to Astonish, issue 53 from 1964. So this is a Giant Man and the Wasp story. It features Porcupine, as they had previously captured in some cement. And we can see here how he actually escapes the whole cement trap thing. And then he joins this fan club that the Giant Man and the Wasp has. And basically just tricks his way in there and then fights the heroes. There's a lot of interesting fighting there with the Porcupine. He is actually a pretty good villain, actually. A lot of gimmicks and stuff like that, but he certainly knows how to trick heroes, even smart ones. Eventually, though, he manages to get hold of a shrinking pill that was in Pimp's or Giant Man's belt. And even though Giant Man protests greatly, he believes he has won and eats the pill and shrinks down to basically a molecule. Just gone. So the last part here we're gonna do is Cutthroat, this character who is a very small-time character. Very little is heard of him actually, and his real name is Daniel Layton, and he's actually Rachel Layton, or otherwise known as Diamondback. He's her brother. Diamondback, of course, is a somewhat girlfriend of Captain America. Anyway, Layton was basically a thug, and previously was in a gang and stuff like that, and eventually he trained himself, became a supervillain. He was introduced in Marvel Team Up issue 89, and later on he came back into the Captain America comics and joined the skeleton crew of Red Skull, of course. However, this was probably not a good idea, as he actually was killed by crossbones by, get this, he got his throat cut. Yeah, that's irony for you. yeah, so but that's basically it. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. Do subscribe if you like this. Of course, all of this is Marvel's and DC's creations. I'm basically just telling the story. And do stay safe and have a good day.